Right, now this past weekend saw the burial of the last of the firefighters that died in the Bank of Lisbon building fire in Johannesburg 2 weeks ago. And the fire brought with it some sharp focus on the issues of safety, particularly around those buildings and what should be going on, particularly in terms of health and safety. Well, joining us now is Dr. Deacon, who's the director of who's the director at the Association of Construction Health and Safety Management, or ACHASM, as I say, that's it right? Claire, thanks very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
So this fire has happened, and there's a focus in different areas about what could have been prevented and the concerns that we should have. And one of them is the building, the construction, and the materials used. But the other, I guess, is all about health and safety practices. Take us through some of the issues that really should be considered to prepare for things like fires.
Well, certainly, I think, Peter, thank you very much for the invitation, and good afternoon to everybody, and just my condolences to the three who lost their lives and the others who were injured in the process. And I think the critical thing for us is that one accident is too many. You know, this type of thing does not need to happen. When somebody plans correctly in terms of the maintenance of a structure or facility, everything is taken into account. The emergency planning, all of the maintenance of all the equipment. I mean, if I look up here and I see all of the equipment that's up above us, all of that needs to be on a maintenance schedule. It all needs to be, checked on a regular basis by competent people. So if all of those things are done at the right time and by the right people, then there is no problem, because people are prepared for anything that might happen. And I think, things happen in a flash. So if you're not prepared, you're going to have a big problem, and people will die or get seriously injured as a result of that, which is obviously what's happened in this case and many others.
So I mean, I look at the inner city, Johannesburg, for example, but other cities around the country the same, where a lot of these buildings are much older. Does that come with health and safety risks, or should it just be the same?
The pyramids have been standing for how many years? And the thing is that I think that the more, the better the maintenance is of a facility, the better it's going to last. And I think that that's the critical scenario. It's not necessarily about the age of the structure, although most buildings are built, or most structures are built for a particular lifetime. And if they're properly maintained, then they will last for ages, until they have to be demolished or they no longer serve their purpose. So that's one of the considerations one should have.
What are some of the shortcomings that health and safety planners are failing to do more, that you're seeing more and more?
Well, we have a saying that accidents are a failure of management. And that means that management has failed to plan. And I think that that's a critical thing that we in the health and safety industry face, is that management don't necessarily understand what the complexities around health and safety are. They're not difficult, but they can become very complex when one is in a very complex environment. And in terms of facilities management in a building and so on, it's not that complicated. It takes a lot of work in terms of getting all of the programs and the maintenance schedules together, because everything comes out with a schedule. And that is a critical scenario in terms of managing the actual risks, that are posed in that set of circumstances.
So I'm just thinking out loud now that maybe we have different levels of competencies, and some people who are qualified to do this kind of thing, and other buildings that literally just get a certificate on day one and they just keep that rolling over. Right.
I think that's a very good point, Peter. I think the critical thing is that is what happens when one hands an asset over to an owner. Then they get given all of the manuals and all the operating instructions. Like you buy a washing machine, you get a book with it that tells you how to operate it. So everybody has that, and it's a matter of that sector now putting that into operation. I think in many cases, administrative types of environments, which most of the facilities are in a downtown city, don't really consider health and safety to be such a risk, because they don't see it as being a high risk environment. They're not working in a factory or on a construction site, which is very high risk. So, a bit like them being an ostrich with their heads in the sand, it's not going to happen to us, and so we're fine,
Is there an auditing process or someone who checks to see that these things are there and they're being complied with, and someone is signing off that he's checked the fire extinguisher?
That should happen. I mean, that is we've got amazing legislation, Peter. Our Department of Labour, and because we're an ILO affiliated country, we have really good legislation which conforms to most international practices. But it's the implementation that generally is the issue. So every employer, in terms of our Occupational Health and Safety Act, is expected to have health and safety representatives and engage competent people to come in and check things like fire extinguishers and fire systems. And they would undertake an audit based on what the original perhaps standards that were for that particular building or space when the building was handed over. Obviously, as time changes and things change, those need to be updated on a regular basis as well. So those are all should be all done by the workers amongst themselves, and then certainly by professionals to come in and do the correct maintenance on those facilities.
One of the issues that came up, particularly with these buildings in Johannesburg, was fire equipment, that some of it might not have been able to deal with those fires. And I just wonder, does that mean that back in the day the standards required were far less, or how is it that we're in a situation where we're even wondering if we could deal with the fire at certain floor levels?
But that's a very big problem. I don't think that the standards have changed. I think that they may well have improved. But certainly, again, it depends on what the infrastructure. If the infrastructure hasn't been maintained, as we know, we lose water every day. We've seen that in many reports. I think that could well be a problem, that maybe the infrastructure surrounding that building or those facilities has not been kept up to speed. And I think that when you're looking after a particular area, you have to make sure that whatever is providing the infrastructure for your space needs to be maintained as well.
All right. So perhaps finally, as an association, what do you want to see happening more and more?
Well, I think understanding of health and safety and understanding that there are the role of health and safety practitioners. We belong to the SACP as you know, in terms of our registration. So our members are mostly registered as either a professional health and safety agent, which is someone like myself, and we have a group of us. And then we have health and safety managers and officers who then would work for contractors and work for different employers, who then would understand what they need to do to be able to make sure that something like this is less likely to happen, and to make sure that the health and safety requirements of a particular space are looked after.
All right, Dr. Claire Deacon, we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks very much indeed for coming through and sharing your insights with us. I think perhaps a conversation we need to keep having to keep it top of mind. Thanks so much indeed.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, so that was Claire Deacon, who's Director of the Association of Construction Health and Safety Management, or ACHASM.